Hi, I'm Gareth Green. Now, I'm just wondering, are you one of those people who get some fantastic musical ideas in your head, but you're kind of struggling to write them down? It's a real frustration, isn't it? And lots of people tell me about this. I don't know about you, my best musical ideas come to me in the middle of the night, in the depth of my dreams, and I think, wow, my fantastic new symphony. When I wake up, I can't remember what it was, but that's not really directly what I'm talking about here. But frequently, an idea comes to mind, doesn't it? And we think, oh, that's a great idea, a little melody there, or maybe some chords that we've heard. And we kind of think, yeah, I'd love to use that in a piece that I'm maybe writing at the moment. How do I write it down? This is where these kind of oral transfer skills are so incredibly useful. So this video is dedicated to giving you a little bit of practice in actually, can we do that stuff? So what you've got on the screen here is 4 bars, 4 measures of a melody in the key of F major. So let's just start by listening to this melody and having a look through it. Now, I'm not trying to say that this is the most inspired melody ever written, because I think it's anything but it's just a little exercise in, can we hear something and write it down? So for example, if you look at that melody, can you hear it in your head as you're looking at it? That's a useful thing to be able to do in order to be able to switch this skill around. But what we're going to try doing here is what we call a little bit of oral dictation. So if you want to make this a really good practical exercise, the best thing you can do is to write down this melody and score out exactly as I've done here. 2 staves, treble and bass clef, B flat in the key signature for F major, 4/4 time signatures. Copy out this melody. And what we're going to do is I'm going to play that melody, but with 3 lower parts. Now, there's a couple of things that you could do to this. Either you could try writing down all of the notes of the lower 3 parts. And I know a lot of musicians have to do this for particular exams they might be studying for. So that's useful. Some people might really want to take on that challenge and think, can I get all of the notes of an alto part, a tenor part, and a bass part under this? Or you might think, well, that's a step too far, but I'll see if I can get the bass line written down. And then maybe see if you can think, well, what are the chords that I'm hearing? And am I hearing a major chord or a minor chord? Well, what do I think is going on? You could do that with Roman numerals or with figured bass. You could do it lead sheet style, whichever way you wanted to do it. But if you want to pause the video, write down that melody and score out, you could actually have a go at doing this. And what I'm going to do is to play the full 4-part harmony a few times. And then as we go through, we'll just talk about, well, how are we getting on with this? And can we hear anything that's going on underneath? What I would recommend you try to do is to get the bass part down first. If you can get the bass part, that will be really good. And I'm going to help to get you started with the first note. So the first note in the bass is F. There it is on line 4. Okay, so that's the first note. So my first melody note is this F up there. My first bass note is this F down here. So I'm now going to play it. See if you can get your ear onto the bass line and write down the bass line. Okay? You can do a combination of kind of hearing notes and trying to plot them, and also trying to memorize the bass a little bit. Okay, let's have a go. So there's that F, there's this F. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, probably some people will get that quite quickly. Other people are thinking, oh, no idea where to start. For many people, it's just a shock hearing the whole thing, thinking, oh, what am I listening to here? That gives you the idea as to what's going on. Now, I'll play it again. Now we've got over the initial shock. And after this playing, you might want to pause the video for as long as you want to, just to think through what you've heard, see if you can plot some or all of the bass notes. One or two clues though. Have a listen to that first bass note, try to get your ear on it, and then think, what's happening? Is it going down? Is it going up? Can you kind of draw the shape of it in the air? You know, is it going by step? Is it leaping? That first F that I hear, does it come back anywhere else? So all these things can just help point you in the right direction. Now this time I'm going to try and give a little bit of emphasis to the bass line to help you with this. And as I say, after this playing, pause it if you're trying to do this as a written exercise and see if you can work on it. When you've got as far as you can get, come back and let's go a bit further. So here's that first bass note and the first note in the melody. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to. Now, what I tried to do in that last playing was to emphasize the bass line so you could get your ear on it a little bit. So let's have another go now and see if you manage to get some of those notes. Well done, that's great. Let's see if you can kind of find some other notes. If you're struggling with this, well, just have another go trying to get your ear on this bass line down here. Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to. Now, I'm hoping that maybe you've started to get over the shock of this and started to piece a few things together. In terms of the general shape of this, if you're struggling, I wonder if you can hear that the bass line starts by kind of walking downhill. So it's kind of going stepwise in a descending direction through the first bar, the first measure, into the second bar, the second measure. Okay, so that's its opening shape. I wonder as well whether you can hear that the last note is the same as the first note. The first chord was this, with this note in the bass. The last chord is this, same note in the bass. So that's a kind of helpful thing, isn't it? So even if we get as far as thinking, yeah, I've heard that note in the bass at the end there, and then what I've heard is a kind of downward direction going to this point. And then you might have thought, oh, actually, I think the note was the same there. And then we've got more movement in that third bar, that third measure. So I wonder if that helps you at all. Okay, let's have another go at trying to get the bass line. So here's the first note and that top note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to. Okay, well, it may be that you've struggled with that, in which case don't worry. If you've not done this kind of stuff before, it's a big sweat. Maybe you've now got a bass line, you want to check it out. Maybe you've got some of the bass line, bits missing. Let me put you out of your misery by telling you what the bass line is. So what we've got after the first note, remember we said we were going down by step, so you can see what's happening here. And I'm not trying to complicate the rhythm in this because actually the rhythm is the same in the parts, just a little bit of independent movement in the last bar, the last measure, which we'll come to later. But you see what I was saying about that bass line descending through the first bar, the first measure, then sitting still in the second measure, the second bar. Then it went up a note to here, and then it actually was the first time that the bass part slipped a third. So everything to that point is repeating or going by step, but then we slip down a third before we step up again before the last note. So the bass line is going F, E, D, C, C, D, B flat, C, F. So if I just play the bass and the top line, see if you can hear that. So part of the challenge is to obviously hear the notes in the bass, but hear that downward shape we talked about, the repetition of that note. You might also have noticed that those two C's are the same as those two C's. They're just a couple of octaves apart, aren't they? So the first note, you know, we had these two F's a couple of octaves apart. We've got these two C's a couple of octaves apart. We've got this final F 1 octave apart. Then you might have noticed at this point, the top part leaps down, the bottom part steps up. Can you hear that movement? That contramotion movement? And then you might just have heard these two notes going in parallel motion. Hear how they're going in the same direction? Okay, so these are all things that you might hear. They're ingredients that you might hear. And obvious things like, you know, the last note being the same as the first note. So any little clues that you can pick up in terms of following the shape of the bass line, in hearing, oh, same note as the top part, going in similar motion, going in contramotion, what's repeating, what's going by step, what's leaping, all of that is going to help you. Now, it may be that having got this far, you now want to concentrate on, well, can I hear what these chords are? So I've kind of got myself sorted out on just being able to say that's chord 1, or that's a chord of F major, or that's a root position chord, a 5/3 chord, whichever system you're used to working with. You might just want to work on that now. Or you may be thinking, no, I'm going to go for the full thing. I'm going to try and hear the exact notes of the middle parts. One thing about this is if you can hear what's going on with the chords, you can make a very intelligent guess at the middle part. So that's another thought. Or if you can get some of the notes in the alto part or the tenor part, that will help you determine the chord. So, you know, there's a little bit that could help you. I'm going to suggest that for those of you who want to kind of go for actually getting the specific notes down, that we go for the alto part next. And just to help with that, let me give you the first alto note. It's an A there in the second space. And just for completion, the first tenor note is middle C. Okay, so we're now going to see if we can hear some of this alto part. So the first chord is this: soprano, alto, tenor, bass. So that's the alto note that we're trying to get our ear onto now. So let's have a go at trying to get some alto notes. Or if you're not doing that, just get working on some chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to. Okay, let's have another go at that. That's the first alto note, that's A, and here's the chord. So hear that A in the chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to. One thing we can say about alto parts is they're often a bit boring. I mean, it sounds a bit of an insult to altos, doesn't it? I don't mean it like that, but quite often a mark of good harmony is stability in one of the parts. So where you have a common note between one chord and the next, repeating it in the same part. That often happens in the alto part. Okay, well, I'm going to give you the alto part now. If you're still trying to find the alto part and you want to rewind and have another go, then of course you can do that. But let me see if you've got anything in the alto part that maybe looks a bit like this. Because what happened after that first A is the alto dropped to an F and then repeated the F and then repeated it again before stepping down to E, before stepping down to D, repeating the D, stepping up to E, and then it had two notes in the last bar, the last measure. It went D for 2 beats, and then it went C for 2 beats. So you can see and hopefully hear what I mean about that stability in the alto part. So the alto part sounds like this. And you can also hear, after that first leap, that downward third at the beginning, we're either repeating or we're going by step, aren't we? So if you can get the shape of it and think, when is it going up, when is it going down? It's relatively straightforward to kind of get that together. So that was the alto part. Now, have a listen to me play all 4 parts again. See if you can hear the alto part. That was the first note. Okay, so this is the whole thing again, but listening for the alto part, now you can see it written down. Okay, that was the alto part. Now, let's go for the tenor part for the sake of completion. So the tenor starts on a middle C. That's the first tenor note, and you can hear that inside the chord. Okay, now one of the great things, if you've got 3 parts, you can have a pretty good guess at what the 4th part might be. It's got to be something that fits the other 3 parts that's going to make sense with the harmony. So even if you can't hear it, you can have a good stab at guessing it. But let's see if you can hear it. Here's that middle C in the tenor. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to. Now, some people find the tenor part a little bit harder to hear than the other parts. Well, don't worry if that's you. It takes a bit of practice tuning your ear into it. And of course, one of the great things is, even if you now, at the end of this video, will know what all the notes are, you can always repeat this video quite a few times just to tune your ear into the process. Use this as a kind of way of getting into being able to hear things and to notate them, to write them down. Okay, let's have another go at listening to the tenor part. That's the C. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to. Okay, I'll put you out of your misery. Here are the tenor notes. I wonder if you heard that the first note repeated straight away. So that was the first thing to gather. Then, a bit like the bass, it runs down by step. So you might have heard the tenor and the bass kind of working in parallel there. And then it did this. So you see how the tenor part's repeated the first note, then it's carried on down the scale. And it carries on a bit further down the scale by going down to that F. Then we have the one and only leap in the tenor part where we come up a 4th to that B flat. We repeat the B flat before, like the alto, we have 2 notes in the final measure, the final bar, doing that. Okay, so this is what the tenor part sounds like. Okay, have a listen to that in the context of all 4 parts. That's the tenor. Okay. Okay, now you might have been one of the people trying to notate the chords. Absolutely fine. If you were doing that, well, this is chord 1. This is an interesting chord that's coming up because it's a tonic 7th chord. So it's 1/7 in its last inversion, which you might know as D, or you might call that a 4/2 chord. That's absolutely fine. Either way is the same thing. And then we've got chord 4 in first inversion, so it's a 4B or a 4/6 if you've learnt it that way. Then we've got a 1C or a 1/6/4 going to 5. Now that's a chord progression we often meet. 1 in second inversion, 5 root position. You can see why it's so popular, but the top and the bottom staying the same. So you might hear chord progressions in that way. Then we've got a chord 6. Then we've got a chord 2 in first inversion, so 2B or a 2/6. And then this is actually a slightly sneaky 5/13. So that's what's going on there, an extension of the dominant chord to 5/13. And then we've got a 4C or a 4/6/4 going to 1. So it's another one of these things where you have a second inversion chord going to there. It's a bit like what we have 1C going to 5 halfway through, 4C going to 1 at the end. So 6/4, 5/3 progression. Or you might have sort of thought of this as a chord of F and then a chord of F, but make it a slash chord because it's over E in the bass. So that's giving you your F7. You might have called it an F7 or F/E. Either way does the job, doesn't it? And then this is a B flat major chord /D because you've got D in the bass. This is an F major chord /C because you've got C in the bass. This is a chord of C. This is a chord of D minor. This is a chord of G minor /B flat because B flat's in the bass. And then you've got this C13. So that's what that one is all about. And then you've got a B flat major chord with F in the bass. That's another slash chord going to F. So whichever way you decided to notate that, these are some of the options that you might have come up with. So it's hopefully quite interesting on more than one level. You can think about, oh, okay, how did that work as a passage of 4-part harmony? Do I like the sound of that? Do I not? How do you use inversion chords, some extension chords, that kind of thing? But mainly this has been focused on, can you hear 4-part harmony? So next time you have some chords going around your head and you're thinking, oh, that's really cool stuff. What is the chord? These are the skills that really enable you to get there. Now, you're not going to get there on just one exercise like this, but I'm just trying to sort of get you started on a journey that will help you make that transition. I think these are really primary musical skills, being able to have ideas in your head that you can then notate. So great for composers, arrangers, and so on. Also great for sight reading, because if you can look at something and think, I know what that sounds like before I play it, you're going to be tons better at sight reading. So I hope that's been a useful exercise, and as I say, you might want to repeat it just to get kind of improve your skills at it. Well, if you've enjoyed this or found it intriguing and sort of thinking, oh, actually I could do with doing much more of this, let me invite you to the place that's going to help you do that. www.mmcourses.co.uk, the Music Matters website. When you get to the homepage, click on courses and then have a search for the Aural dictation course. That's a whole course that goes very systematically through this, starting with melodies and rhythms, going on to 2 parts, 3 parts, then on to 4 parts and beyond. That's really going to help you tool up to do this stuff. So if you're sort of thinking, having looked at this video, this is something that I really need to do more of, it sounds like something dry and academic oral dictation, but actually it's a really essential musical skill that's going to help really empower all this kind of work in your musical life. And I know it's something that frustrates a lot of people, not being able to do this. So go to the Aural dictation course and you can have many a happy hour working through that, really tooling up with these skills. www.mmcourses.co.uk